Welcome to a deep dive into the geoeconomics of a new Eurasia. We're going to be tackling a dense academic paper today.
Oh, wow.
It's called
Okay.
Geoeconomics of a New Eurasia During the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The Role of China's Innovation System,
Mm-hmm.
BRI,
Mm-hmm.
and Sanctions from the Global North.
Okay.
It's by Haider A. Khan.
Right.
And believe me, it's packed with insights about all the forces that are kind of shaping this new Eurasian region,
Okay.
especially China's role.
Yeah.
And there are some surprising facts in here
Really?
that I think will make you see the world a bit differently.
Well, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how economic influence is becoming almost as important as, military might these days.
Yeah, it's like the whole game is changing.
Yeah.
So how did we even get to this new Eurasia
Yeah.
everyone's talking about?
To understand that, you really have to go back and look at Eurasia's history.
Okay.
This massive landmass has always been a focal point for geopolitics.
Right.
Back in 1904, a British geographer named Halford Mackinder even wrote a paper called
Wow.
The Geographic Pivot of History,
Okay.
arguing that basically whoever controlled the heartland of Eurasia could dominate the world.
Oh, so this has been going on for a while.
Yeah, it's not a new idea.
So if it's not all about troops and tanks anymore, what's changed?
Well, the focus has really shifted to
Okay.
economic influence,
Oh.
what we call geoeconomics,
Yeah.
trade routes, technological innovation, financial systems,
Right.
and recent events have really accelerated this shift.
You're talking about like the 2008 financial crisis and the sanctions against Russia after the Ukraine war.
Exactly. The 2008 crisis showed everyone just how interconnected the global economy really is.
Yeah.
And then the sanctions on Russia's energy and financial sectors, those were a game changer,
Right.
They really pushed Russia and China closer, almost out of necessity.
Out of necessity.
Both countries started seeing the risks of depending on, the U.S. dollar and Western-controlled systems.
Yeah.
So
So they decided to team up and create their own game, so to speak.
essentially,
Yeah.
Russia has, vast natural resources, and China's economic and technological power is growing rapidly.
Right. Yeah.
They saw an opportunity to create this strategic space in Eurasia
Okay.
that could operate independently of the West. And that's really where China's Belt and Road Initiative, or the BRI, comes in.
The BRI. Yeah, it's been in the news a lot, but I'll be honest, I'm still not totally clear on what it actually is.
Yeah, it can be kind of confusing. Think of it as like a massive network of
Right.
infrastructure projects.
Okay.
Railways, pipelines, highways, economic zones,
Oh, wow.
all stretching across Eurasia.
Mhm.
The idea is to connect China to Europe
Right.
and the rest of Asia.
Yeah.
The U.S. Council on Foreign Relations even described it as
Really?
a network so vast
Yeah.
it could break the bottleneck in Asian connectivity.
Wow.
It's a really big deal.
That's huge.
It could reshape global trade as we know it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And China's innovation kind of plays a key role in all this, right?
Absolutely.
China
has gone from being like the world's factory, right,
Okay.
to a leader in like cutting edge technology in just a few decades.
Yeah.
A big part of that is what's called their National Innovation System,
Okay.
or NIS for short.
NIS. That sounds complicated.
It is a little bit, but basically it's a network of industries, universities, research institutions,
Okay.
all working together to drive technological progress.
Okay.
And the Chinese government has been very strategic about fostering innovation.
Okay.
They're setting priorities,
Right.
providing funding,
Yeah.
creating incentives for companies and researchers.
Okay.
They're actively shaping the direction of innovation, much like how they built their economy.
So it's not just about letting the free market do its thing?
Not exactly. It's a little bit more nuanced.
Okay.
Haider Khan calls it the Augmented National Innovation System, or ANS. It recognizes that not all countries start from the same point.
Right.
Some need a more active role from the government
Yep.
to catch up technologically.
I'm starting to see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But what does all this innovation actually look like in practice?
Well, let's look at two key areas where China's making incredible progress.
Okay.
Semiconductors
Okay.
and artificial intelligence.
Okay, so semiconductors. Those tiny chips
Right.
that power pretty much all our electronics these days.
Exactly.
I know there's been a global shortage of these lately.
Right.
Yeah.
And China's role in that is absolutely crucial.
Sorry.
Between 2000 and 2011, their semiconductor industry grew at an average annual rate of almost 16%. compared to less than 9% for the global industry.
Okay, that's a big.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
They've been capturing a larger and larger share
Yeah.
of global chip sales.
But I thought the U.S. had imposed sanctions to try and limit China's access to that advanced chip technology.
Yeah.
Hasn't that slowed them down?
It has created challenges for sure.
Okay.
But China's response has been fascinating.
Right.
Instead of backing down,
Okay.
they've doubled down on becoming self-reliant in semiconductors.
So they're just pushing forward even harder.
It's like they've decided to build their own chip-making empire.
Wow. So even with the sanctions, they're finding ways to push forward.
Yeah. And this drive for technological independence is also evident in their approach to artificial intelligence.
Right. AI. I've been seeing headlines about China's AI advancements almost every day.
Yeah.
It seems like they're really taking the lead in this field.
Their progress is remarkable.
Mm.
They've made really significant advances in, natural language processing, image recognition, facial recognition.
Yeah.
And it's not just research. We're seeing real-world applications.
Oh, wow.
Think AI-powered surveillance systems,
Okay.
self-driving cars, even medical diagnosis tools.
Yeah. It's mind-boggling to think about where all this is headed.
Yeah, it is.
But there's more to China's innovation system than just making, cool gadgets, right?
Right.
You mentioned something called CTNR earlier.
Yes. SECINUS. It stands for Socially Embedded Capabilities Enhancing National Innovation System.
Okay, I'll admit that's a bit of a mouthful.
I know, it's a mouthful,
Ah.
but it captures something really important about China's approach.
Right.
SECINUS recognizes that innovation should benefit society
Right.
and the environment,
Okay.
not just the economy.
So it's not just about making China richer, but making life better for its people and protecting the planet.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's about finding this balance
Right, right.
between economic growth, social harmony,
Right.
and environmental sustainability.
That's a pretty unique approach.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
how does the CTNR actually play out in China?
Well, for example, they've been investing heavily in,
Right.
renewable energy technologies,
Yeah.
sustainable infrastructure.
Right.
They're also focusing on social programs to reduce poverty and improve access to healthcare and education.
So they're trying to ensure that the benefits of innovation are shared more broadly.
Exactly.
It sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah, it is.
So China's at the forefront of technological advancement
Yeah.
and trying to do so in a way that benefits society and the environment.
It's really interesting to see
Yeah.
how they're doing it.
But I'm guessing it's not all smooth sailing.
Of course not. There are challenges, too. They
Right.
still face issues like social inequality,
Yeah.
and there are concerns about, censorship and control.
Yeah, those are important factors to consider.
Right. And then, the growing rivalry with the U.S. adds another layer of complexity.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
So it's a mixed bag, but definitely one that's having a major impact on the world.
absolutely. And to understand how this all plays into this new Eurasia,
Okay.
we need to introduce you to another framework.
Okay.
It's a way of looking at international relations
Okay.
that goes beyond just traditional power politics.
Oh.
It's called CTNR,
CTNR.
Critical Trans Neoclassical Realism.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my curiosity.
Okay.
Tell me more.
Okay, so CTNR, Critical Trans Neoclassical Realism.
Right.
It might sound a little intimidating,
Yeah, a little bit.
but it's actually a pretty intuitive way to understand how countries act on the world stage.
Okay.
Imagine you're trying to, predict what a friend will do.
Right.
You wouldn't just consider their personality, right?
Yeah.
You'd also think about their current situation, what's going on in their life, their goals, right?
Yeah.
So CTNR does that for countries.
Okay.
It recognizes the importance of power dynamics.
Okay.
Like, who has the most military might or economic might,
Right.
but it goes deeper than that.
Okay.
It considers domestic factors,
Like what?
like a country's political system,
Okay.
their economic policies,
Mm-hmm.
even things like technological advancements.
Okay.
And it looks at how all these things are interconnected.
So it's like looking at the whole picture, not just a snapshot.
Exactly.
So how does CTNR help us understand this U.S.-China rivalry?
Well, it acknowledges that there's definitely competition
Right.
between the U.S. and China for global influence.
Right.
But it goes beyond just saying, oh, it's a zero-sum game
Right.
where one side has to lose for the other to win.
Okay.
Instead, CTNR suggests that both countries are motivated by a mix of things.
Okay. Like what kind of things?
Security concerns, economic interests,
Okay.
even ideological differences.
It sounds like a pretty complex equation.
It is.
Yeah.
And CTNR helps us see that this rivalry is playing out on multiple levels.
Okay.
It's not just about, two countries clashing. It's
Right.
about two complex systems
Yeah.
interacting in sometimes unpredictable ways.
Yeah.
What happens domestically in each country,
Okay.
their economic policies, their technological advancement,
Yeah.
all of these things influence how they interact with each other
Right.
and with the rest of the world.
So it's like a giant game of chess, but with way more pieces
Yeah.
and a constantly changing board.
Exactly. That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And China's focus on innovation is a key piece in
Right.
this game, right?
Right.
CTNR suggests that China's drive to build this innovation system isn't just about making better products or
Right.
boosting their economy.
Right.
It's also a way to enhance their geopolitical leverage.
So you're saying that technological advancements can actually translate into more power on the world stage.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Think about it. China's investments in, strategic industries like semiconductors,
Right.
these massive infrastructure projects like the BRI, and their efforts to reduce global reliance on the U.S. dollar.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Reduce reliance on the U.S. dollar. How are they doing that?
By promoting the use of their own currency,
Okay.
the yuan.
Okay.
This is called de-dollarization,
Okay.
and it's a pretty big deal.
Okay.
For a long time, the U.S. dollar has been the world's dominant currency, right?
Right.
The one used for most international trade and finance,
Right.
but China is trying to shift the balance.
Wow. That would definitely shake things up.
It would.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that has, a lot of people, especially in the U.S., feeling a little nervous.
So if China's playing chess, de-dollarization is like a power move.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
And their advancements in things like semiconductors and AI
Right.
are giving them even more leverage in this game.
Okay.
Those technologies are going to be crucial
Yeah.
for the industries of the future.
Right.
Whoever controls them
Yeah.
is going to have a lot of economic and geopolitical power.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together now.
Yeah.
China's innovation is giving them more economic clout,
Right.
which they're using to challenge the existing global order.
That's a great summary.
Okay.
And now let's zoom3in on one of those pieces. The BRI.
Right, the Belt and Road Initiative.
Yeah.
We talked about it briefly earlier, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around the scale of it.
It is massive.
Yeah.
Imagine this network of, roads and railways connecting you directly to markets across Asia and Europe.
Wow.
That's the potential impact of China's BRI.
That's huge.
They're investing in ports, energy pipelines, even digital infrastructure.
But hasn't the BRI also sparked some controversy?
Yeah.
I've heard concerns about China using it to, trap countries in debt.
That's a valid concern.
Well, okay.
There have been cases where countries have struggled to
Yeah.
repay the loans they took from China
Right.
for BRI projects.
Okay.
But it's not the whole story.
So there's more to it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The BRI has also brought much-needed investment
Oh.
to developing countries,
Okay.
creating jobs, boosting economies.
Right.
A lot of these countries were overlooked
Yeah.
by Western investors.
Yeah.
So for them, the BRI is an opportunity,
Okay.
not a threat.
So it sounds like the BRI has the potential to be both beneficial and problematic.
Yeah, depends on how it's managed.
This CTNR framework has been really helpful for understanding all these forces at work.
It really encourages us to, think beyond these simplistic narratives
Yeah.
and to consider the multiple dimensions of this new Eurasian landscape.
Okay.
It's not just a clash of civilizations or a
Yeah.
simple power grab.
Right.
It's really about this complex interplay of economics,
Yeah.
politics, technology, ideology,
Yeah.
all unfolding on this massive scale.
It's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
And one that's still being written.
It is.
Curious to know what you think the future holds for this new Eurasia.
It is, yeah.
And a little overwhelming, to be honest.
Yeah.
We've covered so much ground from historical geopolitics
Right.
to cutting edge technologies
Mhm.
and then this whole new way of thinking about international relations with CTNR.
Right. It's a lot.
But I think the big question for me, and probably a lot of our listeners, is
Yeah.
what does this all mean for us?
Yeah.
Why should we even care
Right.
about what's happening in Eurasia, especially with China's rise?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that this isn't just some, abstract
Right.
academic debate.
Right.
This is about the world that we live in right now, the
Mhm.
economy that impacts, our jobs,
Right.
the prices we pay,
Yeah.
the technologies that shape our lives every day, and
Yeah.
even, the future security of our nations.
So it's not just some far-off event happening on the other side of the world.
Not at all.
Okay.
The rise of this new Eurasian region with China at the forefront, it's already having ripple effects
Okay.
that are being felt globally.
Okay. Can you give me an example?
Well, think about the global chip shortage
Right, we're talking about that.
that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
That shortage has impacted everything, right?
Yeah.
From the availability of cars to the price of smartphones.
Right.
And China's drive for self-reliance in semiconductors.
Right.
Well, that means that they'll have a bigger say
Dave.
in how those shortages play out in the future.
Wow. I hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah.
It really drives home how interconnected the world is these days.
Exactly. And it's not just about semiconductors.
Right.
China's dominance in AI, that could completely reshape industries, right?
Yeah, like what?
Healthcare, transportation, manufacturing,
Right.
their investments in renewable energy technologies could impact the global fight against climate change.
Okay, I'm starting to get a sense of the scale of this.
Yeah.
So what can we even do about it? I mean, it all feels pretty big and complex.
Well, the first step is to understand what's happening,
Right.
which is exactly what we're doing in this deep dive, right?
Right.
By becoming more informed,
Mm-hmm.
we can start to think more strategically about the choices that we make as individuals, as businesses, and as nations.
So knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But it's not enough to just passively consume information. We need to, engage in thoughtful discussions, challenge assumptions, and consider multiple perspectives.
It's like what we're doing here.
Exactly. We need to think about the potential benefits and risks
Okay.
of China's rise, the challenges and opportunities presented by this new Eurasian landscape,
Right.
and, what role our own countries can play in shaping how all this unfolds.
It sounds like a call to action.
It is. We're not just observers in this story,
All right.
We're participants.
Right.
The choices we make today will have consequences for the future of Eurasia and for the global order.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap
Okay.
of what we've kind of learned in this deep dive today,
All right.
just to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Sounds good.
So we started by looking at the historical context of Eurasia, right? This massive landmass
Yeah.
that's always been a focal point of geopolitics.
A key region.
And we saw how the focus has kind of shifted from like traditional military power to economic influence, right?
What we call geoeconomics.
And then we dove deep into China's role in this new Eurasia, right?
Right.
Especially their ambitious Belt and Road Initiative.
Yeah.
This massive network of infrastructure projects
Yeah, it's huge.
across the region and beyond.
Yeah.
We explored how their innovation system is driving their rise.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of economic growth, but also in their efforts to advance technologies like semiconductors and AI.
That's really impressive.
And then we learned about their unique approach to innovation, right?
Yeah.
You were talking about CTNR, which emphasizes like social harmony and environmental sustainability.
It's a really interesting model.
And then we grappled with this whole new framework for understanding international relations called CTNR.
Right.
And it helped us see how China's using its growing economic and technological power
Right.
to kind of challenge the existing global order and create a more multipolar world.
Yeah.
And we also looked at how Russia fits into this equation, right? How the sanctions imposed after the Ukraine war
Right.
have pushed them closer to China.
Yeah, definitely.
And we talked about the potential for both cooperation and conflict in their relationship.
Absolutely.
It's a lot to take in, but hopefully you've emerged from this deep dive with a better understanding of all these forces shaping this new Eurasia and why it matters to all of us.
I hope so too.
This has been an incredibly insightful journey.
Yeah, it really has.
I want to thank you for being our guide to this complex and fascinating landscape.
It's been my pleasure.
But it sounds like the journey isn't over yet.
Right.
What are some potential scenarios for the future?
Well, I mean, it's impossible to predict the future with certainty.
Of course.
But there are a few key things, I think, to keep in mind.
Yeah.
The U.S.-China rivalry is likely to continue to intensify.
Okay.
We'll see competition playing out in areas like, technology, trade, and geopolitics.
Right.
The relationship between China and Russia will also be crucial to watch.
Okay.
It has the potential to either stabilize or destabilize the whole region.
Yeah.
And then, the choices made by other countries in Eurasia and beyond, those will also play a role.
So it's a pretty dynamic situation
Very dynamic.
with a lot of moving parts.
Absolutely.
So that's why it's so crucial, I guess, to stay informed, to think critically, and to consider those multiple perspectives.
Exactly.
Where do we go from here? What can we do to navigate this complex landscape?
Well, I think the first thing is to keep learning, right?
Okay.
Keep asking questions.
Yeah.
And, challenge those assumptions.
Right.
Don't just accept what you hear from the media or from politicians at face value, right? Dig a little deeper, do your own research, and form your own conclusions.
It sounds like you're saying we all have a role to play in this.
I think we do.
Even if we're not, policymakers or world leaders.
Exactly. The decisions we make as individuals, or as consumers, as voters, all of these contribute to this larger picture.
Right.
And by becoming more informed and engaged, we can help to ensure that this new Eurasia develops in a way that benefits everyone.
Well said. This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has been.
And I want to thank you again for being our guide.
You're welcome.
Through this complex and fascinating landscape.
Happy to do it.
And for those of you listening, we hope this deep dive has, sparked your curiosity and given you a new perspective on the world.
Absolutely.
We encourage you to continue exploring, to keep asking questions, and to, engage in those thoughtful discussions about the future. Because the story of this new Eurasia, it's still being written.
Yeah, it is.
And we all have a role to play.
We all do.
In shaping how this all ends.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.